So I get asked a lot about interest rates. What's the rate today? What do I expect the rate to be? Where's the market heading? Should I lock? If I lock and the rates go down, can I get a lower rate? Well, you can't. I mean, I know there's companies out there that offer what they call a float down, but I know they also have to bake in a margin in there to take care of that. So in reality, are they really giving you the best rate possible if they're able to bake in some sort of hedge on that to be able to float it down if the market moves? I don't know. I can't speak to how they do that. But ultimately, when we lock in an interest rate and we decide that that's the day that works best, and a lot of the times when it comes to locking in a rate, we usually tend to not look close towards that until we know the property is ready to appraise. Because it could be said, you know, property will be ready in 30 days. We lock the loan for 30 days and then the rehab takes longer. Then what? Now we have the market turned and we have some sort of cost to extend, you have to take that on. Now, the reason why that is once that rate locks, it's taken out of the bond pool, the mortgage-backed securities pool. You know, I saw on Investopedia where they talk a lot about the mortgage-backed securities. Go on there, check it out. But what you would do is actually take the money out. That money is going to be used at that day's rate. So whoever put the money into that pool is going to start getting a rate of return based upon the day that it was taken and put to use for you. So once that is put in place, we go that window of time, that lock period, 15, 30, 45 days, sometimes 60 days if we need to. Once it funds, that is now your interest rate for the duration of that. You're going to see something like APR pop up. That's not your rate. That has to do with a cost structure, and divide that by the years that the loan is going to be in service and the loan amount. Then you recalculate the payment versus the loan size, and then you get this APR. But the interest rate is what is going to dictate your payment. Now, when it comes to that, I watch the mortgage-backed securities myself. I watch them trade day by day. If you want us to connect on a regular basis, feel free to schedule some time that we can talk consistently as we're approaching the completion of a rehab of property or approaching another milestone within that. Do we want to be cognizant of the rate time? So that way we can talk about what's going on in the market. Just because the Fed lowered the rates doesn't mean the interest rates got lower on the long-term loans like homes. That's an overnight rate between banks. Sometimes if the Fed raises or lowers the rate, sometimes lowers it too quickly, it can spark inflation. Inflation is the enemy to bonds, therefore the enemy to the mortgage-backed securities, and would actually create the investors who would typically put money in there for us to use for your loan to leave those pools and go to someplace else and invest somewhere else. When that bond pool shrinks, the interest rate goes up. It's a supply and demand thing. So not always does the Fed's movement translate to a direct adjustment in the interest rate within that short window of time. It may have some effects down the road. It always does, because that impacts the economy. How the economy is impacted was what dictates the interest rates, where people are putting their money. So just know that when the Fed makes a movement, we're not going to see it translate to anything the next day, or very rarely will it translate to anything. I get a lot of calls the day after the Fed does something. It's okay, let's lock. And what did the rate happen? It must have dropped. Or if we locked a few days before the Fed did what he did, and then they see the news, now all of a sudden everybody's rattling my cage saying, "Can I get the lower rate?" When there isn't a lower rate, and then they feel like I'm lying to them. I'm not lying to you. The Fed doesn't have that kind of effect. The other thing is looking online. Too often people say, well, why is your interest rate in the high 4s and bankrate.com says in the mid 3s? There's a difference. Bankrate.com is dealing with all the homeowners out there. The real estate investors is a small segment of the home buying economy. They're not catering to that group. They're catering to home owners. People are buying $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $700,000 houses. Not the investor buying $80,000, $90,000, $110,000 house. So they're going to quote a rate based upon a person living in it and having a larger loan size. Those two have a big effect on what that interest rate is. So when you're going out there looking on Bankrate and you see that generalized rate that's out there, and then you talk to somebody about an investor loan for a real estate investment property, it's going to be vastly different, point to a point and a half different. Be ready for that. Don't get disappointed about it, because in reality, because of inflation, you're not paying the rate anyway. And the rate that you pay is being paid by your tenant if you did the right thing and getting the right team and the right property and keep it rented for the majority of the time. Somebody else is paying it, and you get to write it off on your taxes if you did. So when it really boils down to interest rate is not affecting you